Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Jay Ferro. Jay is the Executive Vice President and Chief Information and Technology Officer of Clario, a clinical trials organization that fuses deep scientific expertise and global scale into the broadest endpoint technology platform. Jay has a rich history as a technology executive, having been the CIO of Quikrete, ExamWorks, where he was also the CTO, Earthlink, where he was also the Chief Product Officer, the American Cancer Society, AdCare Health Systems, and AIG. Jay's also among the most social CIOs in the world, as judged by his 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, his nearly 12,000 more on Twitter. And he's also a two-time winner of the Georgia CIO of the Year Award, given by Inspire CIO. Jay, welcome back to Technovation. It's always wonderful to speak with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What an intro, Peter. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me. And all that means is I've been around for a while, but it's great to be with you once again, my friend.
It's always a pleasure. Been looking forward to this conversation. Well, Jay, let's talk a bit more about Clario. I provided just a small thumbnail sketches to the business that you're in, but provide a little more of one if you would, especially for those who may be less familiar with the business.
You know, you did a really nice job of summing it up, though, in a snapshot. So clearly you did your research, which is great. Look, I mean, I think even since the dawn of COVID a couple of years ago, clinical trials are on front and center in, I think, our minds, given the vaccines, et cetera. And they play, even, much going back much further, they play an integral role in the world's health, in livelihood, and all of that. So, it's an exciting space to be in. It's vibrant. Technology is changing at a much faster clip. We take endpoint data from various modalities, various technologies, and we fuse, and you did a nice job of summing it up, our medical technology and scientific expertise to ensure that clinical trials run smoothly, whether they're on site, decentralized, hybrid. As you would imagine, in the last couple of years, there's been a huge focus, Peter, on not just work from home, but decentralized or hybrid clinical trials, given that people don't have access to a site where normally maybe they would go in and have vitals read or get their heart rate measured or breathe into a device or fill out a survey. Certainly what the pandemic has taught us is new ways of working. And Clario has been very well positioned, being a leader in decentralized trials, where we can offer those solutions globally and continue the machine of clinical trials. We feel we play an integral role in the patient experience. We play an integral role in saving lives or transforming lives around the world. And I want people to know at Clario, on my team and even outside of my team, that we're on a mission. And that sounds very much, perhaps, Peter, hearkening back to my American Cancer Society days. But it's, to me, I believe that companies are better when they, you rally around a mission, and our mission is to pursue and the richest clinical evidence, the highest level of quality. We want to be a partner of choice. Certainly, we want to be committed to innovation in the future of clinical trials, but we want to transform lives as a result of doing all of that. So that's what excites me, is that we play an integral role. And if we do our job right, the world is fueled with better therapeutics, ideally in better living.
That's a great overview. Thank you for that, Jay. I mentioned at the outset, you're the CIO and CTO. You've been with the company just shy of 2 years. It was 6 months in that you added the CTO role to the CIO role. And so you've got a broad a swath of responsibilities associated with technology. Talk a bit about the construct of your role, if you would, and the two different sides of it and what that constitutes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. The line is probably pretty much what you would have expected. It was a much harder line when I took over the CTO role than it is today, where we've merged a good bit. The CIO role was more your traditional data center, cloud, compute, customer service, service desk, security, corporate systems, et cetera. Where the CTO role, as you would have guessed, what's left over, data and analytics, product development or engineering, enterprise architecture, PMO governance, et cetera. Since then, we've fused them. Yes, there are, of course, still job roles. In the past, at least within the Clario or the legacy ERT organization, they were led by different people. and they were two completely disparate organizations. And what that did is it created, I believe, an artificial construct that really didn't need to be there. Now, that does not mean every company needs to have a CIO and a CTO under one leader. It's just given the history and given the speed at which we were moving, it made sense, at least the CEO felt it made sense to combine the organization under one leader with one cultural change agenda, one style of leadership, et cetera. So we've seen great success in our speed of delivery, the quality of our delivery, the collaboration, the single source of truth, et cetera. Certainly it's easier for the CEO with one throat to choke, but there's no internal constraint anymore of, well, that's an R&D or CTO thing, not a CIO thing. It's simply a technology thing. So there's been a little bit of an internal rebranding as well with Clario technology that we're just at the beginning of. So and I think at the end of the day, Peter, what probably happened is I drew the short straw, and I got to wear both hats. No, I love it. I love it. I love what we do as an organization. I love my team. They're very passionate about what they do. And in watching the collaboration form with organizations that were just siloed for no real reason. Now, again, I've been in companies where the CIO and the CTO certainly have worked together quite nicely, and that's fine. In this particular case, it sped up our integration and our overall transformation to have them report up to one leader.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I know from our recent past conversation, you described the CTO role, and you alluded to it a moment ago as getting much more involved in R&D as well. And you talked with a special focus on the R of the R&D, the research aspect of this.
And more D than R, but it's in other companies, perhaps it's called software development, engineering, application development, product development. In very close partnership with my product management colleagues and our P&L leaders, et cetera, certainly under the guidance of our CEO. I love it. I love the fact that we play an integral role. My organization plays an integral role in the technology solutions that we deliver. Of course, you get the bad with the good, right? You're accountable for it. You have the authority over it, but you also have the accountability over it. And I wouldn't have it any other way. We've grown through acquisition. We have a lot of solutions. We want to bring a top shelf customer experience. And in our vernacular, that customer really falls into probably 4 general buckets, Peter. It's the site, where you're dealing with the site running a trial. A sponsor certainly could be a CRO or a pharma organization. Certainly patient has to be paramount, right? The patient experience. These are people that have volunteered to go through clinical trials, and the last thing you want to do is burden them with cumbersome technology, whether it's a device or a software platform, an app or whatever. And you certainly want that to be as easy to use as it can be, to remove that friction as they go through the trial process. And then the fourth would be just internal customers, right? I think it's always as important to make sure that you don't forget your internal customers. We sometimes get enamored with all the outside facing stuff, and the cobbler's children has no shoes, right? They're dealing with rubbing rocks together to generate a fire. And I always want to keep an eye on our internal customer experience as well.
Well, that's an interesting multi-headed customer that you're referring to. And the fact that you need to contemplate customer experience more holistically, I find really interesting. Maybe we dial into that a little bit further, if you don't mind, Jay. So site, sponsor, patient, internal customers, your colleagues across Clario. How do you think about those, the similarities and differences across those constituent groups? And how do you engage with each of them to have a better understanding as to what good looks like, not only from your own sort of hypotheses, but drawing from them as well?
Well, first of all, you got to listen and put yourself in their shoes. And you've probably heard me say this many times, you have to eat your own cooking. Yeah. So obviously putting the tools in the hands of the technology organization to make sure they understand day in the life, whether that means using all of the tools, but more importantly, getting out to the front lines, getting to a site, talking to site folks at a site, talk to people who are running a trial, interact with patients, see what your competitors are doing. I think many of the choices that we make, though, are somewhat no-brainers. I think sometimes we wait as technologists. It's a bit of a throwback comment that I'm about to make, Peter, but I'm sure you've heard it many times. We've got to gather the requirements, and we can't gather the requirements if we don't have X. And it's this very old waterfall kind of thinking. I think many times technologists, they know 80% of the answer. 10 logins isn't as good as one. You know that a clunky interface that requires a very old operating system probably isn't going to be perceived as best in class. Forcing a patient to have 3 devices and 6 logins isn't an ideal user experience. So there are things that you can do if you just put your common sense hat on right out of the gate to begin to work toward those things. And I try to remind my team all the time, and I have such a good relationship with our product management folks, and we have terrific leaders in that group. I try to remind them all the time that, look, our patients, our sites, and our sponsors, their bar is what yours are as a consumer, right? When you pop open the Chipotle app, the Walmart app, the Target app, the Uber, the Lyft of the world, all of these things which are quite well done, the Bank of America or Delta apps, which have won awards in their particular spaces. Why have they won awards? Because they're easy to use and they anticipate needs. They're very well done. They're updated frequently. They put the customer, they put you front and center. Those concepts are not foreign or unique to just them. They're unique to really everything. And that's the bar our patients have when they go about their business that has nothing to do with the clinical trial. So I want that kind of maniacal focus on removing friction and not waiting to be blessed or knighted and say, you know what, we're going to review this constantly. And I know you're familiar with this term, but create a flywheel of removing friction, where it's just this continual improvement where we're challenging ourselves. Could this be faster? Could this be more stable? Could this be, more easy to use? Are we listening and feeding that back constantly? So we're getting there. We're not quite where I would want to be yet. Certainly, we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we're building that culture.
Yeah, really interesting overview of that. Another thing that you shared with me was it's an organization that has grown through acquisition. I think you said it's 30 some acquisitions that have primarily made up what is now Clario. And I know yours is a role that cuts across those different parts of the organization and in many ways helps form the glue across it as well. Talk a bit about some of the work that you and the team are doing to find those commonalities or pockets of excellence that are candidates for centers of excellence and these sorts of things that you might undertake.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we are a company of companies. And most recently, we're a company that used to be ERT and BioClinica, and we merged to become Clario. In our minds, and certainly I think we stand up to any kind of scrutiny, is we've created the broadest endpoint technology platform or organization in the world due to our breadth and depth and our scientific expertise. But along with that, in growing that way, becomes a lot of, whether it's tech debt, process debt, siloed thinking, et cetera. And I think we've done a very nice job over the last, in my 18 months, right under 2 years now, we've done a very nice job in knocking those walls down and not only just removing barriers in consolidating systems or departments, which is just really kind of the beginning of it, but creating a Clario way, right? And it sometimes isn't about picking the best. It's about maybe creating the best and saying, well, look, whether legacy ERT did it better or BioClinica, let's identify very quickly who's doing it better or which organization did it better, and maybe use that as a bit of a baseline or a template, but then really take a step back and ask ourselves, but if we were going to wave a magic wand, and I know you know me well enough to know where I'm going with this, but I'm a big fan of North Stars, and I don't like constrained thinking of our only reference points are the companies that we grew up in. And forget all that. I know money, time, all of these things were bound by the laws of physics. But if we weren't, what would it look like? And this could be anything as simple as a procurement process, a project prioritization process. It could be an SDLC. It could be your DevOps and your engineering things. It could be an internal app. It could be BI. It could be a customer portal, all of these things. What should this look like? What is best of breed? And start with that in mind, and then look to see what you have already. Where am I closest to that, and what can I build on and leverage? And then, as important as all of that is, what can I quickly sunset and say no to that simplifies our thinking, where you say, okay, we've universally made a choice to go with process or technology X. That means we relentlessly and maniacally sunset Y, Z, A, B, Z, whatever it is, along the way as quickly as possible, whether that means multiple ERPs, whether that means multiple customer portals. That could be something as simple as just data center, not simple, of course, but conceptually, data center consolidation, et cetera. Plan it and then be maniacal about reducing, because otherwise it just ages very poorly. It's like milk, not wine. And we were talking about Italy off camera a little bit, some fine wine over there in Italy. Not like milk, which ages very poorly. And technical debt ages poorly, not like good wine. So, it's been done in partnership with my non-technology colleagues, certainly product and the CFO and the chief marketing officer, our chief commercial officer, et cetera, making sure they understand the burn off of some of these. And by the way, they're very hungry for that simplification as well. Because quite frankly, when you take together multiple customer service organizations, multiple operations groups, and you slap them together, you bring them together, and they all have their legacy technical debt or ways of working. And it's not always just about like the apps, but it's just the constraints that they have. They use different ticketing systems. They have different processes. Showing them that they have a partner in technology who is relentless in the pursuit of simplification as they are, is key.
Great topics there. And I really love that the whole idea of, as you're introducing the new, you're ever thinking about what you are then eliminating, so that you are not just adding complexity as you're adding new innovations for the organization as well.
Right.
You alluded, Jay, at the outset that this has been a remarkable time for your industry and for your company. And I know you've spoken about how the pace of throughput has been remarkable through COVID, through the pandemic, through remote work, and a variety of new ways of working that we've all experienced in now 2+ years in the grip of this pandemic. I wonder your own perspectives on the sustainability of that pace, and what sorts of things leaders need to do to ensure that, on the one hand, we're not giving up some of the great advantages that we've gotten, while also recognizing that there's a cost at times to simply focusing on speed as one of the critical metrics to determine success or lack thereof. What are your thoughts, Jay?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think you summed it up nicely. I think we've learned a lot of things. I think even in companies that perhaps are a bit older in their thinking, and I'm not really thinking of anything, but even in industries that were perhaps considered stodgier or slower to adopt new ways of working, it was a wake-up call that, hey, this actually worked out pretty well. People were still very engaged. They're still very dedicated. We're still getting things done. The business continued and people still thrived and delivered. So I think there's some tremendous advantages. And we've seen such a huge acceleration of digital transformation over the last couple of years. In some cases, companies were prepared. In other cases, they weren't. And they're catching up, very quickly, because the pandemic shone a light on where perhaps they had gaps. I think the fear that I have, as we settle down into likely what will be a hybrid mode, where what I'm very excited about is I can look for talent anywhere. You build around hubs, perhaps, or you build around centers of excellence, whether they be virtual or physical. And it doesn't matter where the talent is. You've heard me say, and I've said many times, look, if I have a good developer or a good architect or a good engineer, I don't care if they're on the moon. In that case, I hope they have air and food. But I also want them to have a good internet connection, a great attitude. They want to be part of the team. But look, can you give them an experience? Can you give them an experience? We try to create, and we're not unique in this, but Clario wants to be a destination employer where people, where we can attract talent because A, we have meaningful work. B, we give them a career path. They come into a positive, vibrant, fast-moving, terrific technology, but they're building things that are impactful to society. There's a lot of great things that we can sell. Certainly, being competitive, or all those things have to be there. But we have to guard against burnout. And I think with so many companies, and this is not a great revelation, but in this 24/7, 365 always culture that we're on, you have to just intentionally respect PTO, burnout, off hours. Look, we're IT people, we're technologists. We know since time began, we're working crazy hours, right? You're implementing things over the weekend at night. I remember many days in the 90s and the early 2000s sleeping in a conference room as you're doing an ERP go live and you're doing a cutover and you're doing validation. We all did it back in the day. Look, the lines are blurred. And what I don't want is I don't want to lose people because they think that I think they're on 24/7, 365. So absolutely making sure that you respect the boundaries and you love the whole employee, not just assuming they're working 24/7 like a drone or like a Terminator unit, that you love their whole employee. I love seeing kids run across camera. I love hearing dogs barking. Look, it's the world we live in now, but you'd never tell people to apologize. Don't apologize. That's the real life. I want to know all of Peter High, not just the work Peter High. And you got to start thinking that way, because otherwise you're going to lose people. And I find when you show them that respect, and somebody checks into a conference call or a status meeting or something, and they're on PTO, call them out. And I've said this many times. I'm like, what are you doing on this call? Well, the kids are. Nope. Don't make me kick you out of this conference room and embarrass you in front of everybody. Turn it off. The work will be here when you get back. Go enjoy your family. So it's look, I think there's more good than bad that has come along with it. But we've got to guard against the bad.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Very well said. Jay, I also wanted to ask you about a special relationship of yours, that with Joe Eazor, who, if I recall correctly, you've been a colleague of now 3 times over. He was until recently the chief executive officer of Clario. He's still on the board of the organization and a longtime collaborator of yours. Talk a bit about that relationship and the bond that you forged now across multiple times working together, if you would.
I think it's a chemistry and a trust issue. I liked Joe the minute I met him. And what I love about him is he trusts me. I trust him. And he let me do my thing. He was a trust but verify kind of guy, and certainly would investigate what's important and drill in where needed. And when you have a partner, I never felt like I reported to him, though it was clear I did. I felt like I was a colleague right out of the gate, where I was a trusted advisor, and but never too far where it's like, I don't know, that's an IT thing. Ferro, what do you got? It was just more of a partnership. And I think that kind of relationship, particularly with the role of the CIO or the CTO, is not as common as we would like. We would like that. The CFOs, I think by default, tend to have that. Perhaps the heads of HR or the chief marketing officer, or the head of commercial tends to have that. I think historically, although it is improving dramatically, the role of the CIO, CTO wasn't as inherently close to the CEO as perhaps it is today. And so when you have that, you have an opportunity to work with somebody that you genuinely like. You like their vision, you like what they're about. You definitely listen each time. I guess he didn't learn from his other prior mistakes, but he, it was a pleasure. And always a pleasure to get a phone call from Joe, to get a chance to work with him and solve some problems again.
That's really interesting. What a special relationship, I'm sure. Well, hey, I wanted to also, you and I've spoken about this before, but I wanted to reiterate and mine the topic again. I mentioned at the outset the fact that you're a social chief information officer, chief technology officer. You're somebody who has long believed in and participated in social media and draw a lot of value, as you also, and I can validate this as being on the other end of your social media presence, delivered a lot of value to those who are part of it. I wonder how your thought process has evolved, and the value, today that you draw from it, different from, or perhaps similar to, the early stages of your investment in social media channels. Why do you continue to spend time on it? Engage with your ecosystem, and how, if at all, has that changed in the past several years?
If anything, it's reinforced what time has done, Peter. It's reinforced how important it is to me. Now, again, it's not for everybody, and I appreciate that. We all get the same 24 hours, and they may choose to invest their time, talent, and treasure in other areas, and that's fine. I get a lot of value from it for many reasons. One, everybody on this planet knows something that I don't. In fact, everybody on this planet probably knows a million things that I don't. And they're probably better at what they do than I am. But be that as it may, I love learning. I love helping others. I love mentoring. I love being mentored. I love the fact that I can build friendships like ours. And I think about so many of the other friendships that I have all around the globe that were initiated and then continue to be fostered by social media. And when you meet in person, it's two truly friends that are coming together. It's not like friends, you are friends. And so these deep connections, this deep learning, just even today in 2022 continues to just make me smile. So I definitely make time to do it. And I encourage other CIOs and CTOs who sometimes perhaps we put blockers in front of us, like nobody would want to hear from me. We have this aw shucks, gee whiz, I'm just the CIO kind of thing. I don't really have a voice, or, look, there are people stepping in it every single day who are on the front lines doing what you're doing. And the fact that at the very least you can commiserate and share war stories, but chances are you can find solutions to challenges that you have, build a friendship, have somebody to see when you visit another market, and grab coffee like you and I have done many, many times over the years. And I love it. I don't know. It's just, it makes me giggle. It makes me laugh. I probably shouldn't use the word giggle, but it actually still, there's a coolness to it that I can build relationships with people around the globe just through Twitter or LinkedIn, and that somebody actually gives a crap about what I have to say. But I have recruited talent through it. I have built friendships. I have learned far more than I have taught. I have built lifelong relationships. So I continue to make it a priority.
That's a great overview. Thank you. It's great to understand somebody who is as the breadth and depth of experience you have with it to understand how you continue to draw value from it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. The one thing I'll add, Peter, is that, look, even if you're not a softie and you're like, gosh, this seems painful to me, I would argue, try it, get it out there. It builds momentum over time. And even if it's not your thing, there actually is a reward for doing it. The name recognition, certainly when it comes to board presence, if people are looking for a CIO to join their board, you tend to, if you're a more well-known CIO or CTO or head of technology, you have a voice, you're known for something, you're better networked, much higher likelihood that your name pops up for perhaps a job, an interview, a board position, whatever. And it can be richly rewarding that way if you don't care about maybe the more human element of it.
Yeah. All good advice, certainly.
Yep.
I wanted, Jay, to ask you also about trends that excite you as you look to the future. We've noted a few of them, especially those pertaining to your business, of course, which is itself riding a number of very important trends and helping drive some of those as well. As you look to the future, what are some additional items that are making their way onto your roadmap and have you excited?
Well, in our, you can't go to a pharma conference or a clinical trial conference, and not talk about the concept of decentralized trials. We have a platform called Trial Anywhere and a number of other technologies that we use to fuel that, and we continue to innovate in that area. But like any other industry, you want to go to where your customers are, right? You want to meet them where they are, and the whole notion that you can run a clinical trial through a combination of at home, remote, BYOD, site, et cetera. It's not an if it's coming, it's here, and it's going to continue to build momentum. So that excites me for many reasons. One, I think it's going to speed up access to clinical trials or broaden access to clinical trials. I think it's going to allow outreach to a much more diverse slate of clinical trial participant diversity. As you would imagine, it's not just important on the employer side, but in what we do in the clinical trial space, diversity in your in your participant or patient pool is absolutely paramount. So you're getting the richest and broadest set of evidence for a therapeutic or for a trial. So I think these technologies, whether it's mobile technology, remote video technology, remote sensors, wearables, whatever the technology is that supports that, it has a huge multiplier effect. The other one is AI. I know we've talked about AI now for years and years, and I remember days in the past where the closest we got to AI, real meaningful AI, was playing chess with a certain big blue organization, and or perhaps talking to Bob Dylan and having a conversation on a commercial. But I believe, and obviously you know this as well, if not better than I do, we're beginning to see the fruits of our labor. And I think AI certainly has and will continue to play a meaningful role in the clinical trial space. I'm of the opinion that it's a supplement to the scientific expertise that exists. It's a supplement to the human element. It's not a replacement of. But I think what it does is it empowers the human element in the clinical trial space and has the potential to remove error, improve speed, improve quality, et cetera. So I'm very bullish on what AI is doing for us and what it'll continue to do in the future.
Great observations and great topics raised there. Appreciate you noting each of those. Jay, I also wanted to ask you, as somebody I know to be very kind of deep in your thoughts and very reflective, as you think across your career, I mentioned multiple times over a CIO or CTO, a chief product officer, a chief in many different forms. What have been some of the difference makers for you along the way that have led to your success and the heights that you have reached? What are some things, and especially the extent to which it might be something that you would offer as advice to others who might wish to walk in your footsteps? I'd be interested in maybe a couple or three different items that come to mind.
Well, absolutely. First of all, I think finding mentors and being a mentor are absolutely paramount. I learn as much from my mentees as if not more than they certainly learn from me. And I think when we talk about the concept of a mentor, you think this one person owns everything that there is to do. There's this paragon of being a CIO or CTO or senior executive. And rarely is that the case, although I'm sure it does happen. But there's aspects of their personal portfolio that you want to emulate or unpack. Perhaps they're a good public speaker. Perhaps they're able to crystallize their thoughts quite rapidly and present in a very compact way complex ideas. Those are things that you can hook onto. And I always encourage people, find people, buy a cup of coffee, meet for breakfast, have a lunch, have a Zoom, whatever it is. And don't be afraid to set up that relationship. And you don't have to over science it and turn it into a monthly thing. It could be a one-off occasionally. I have found that 99.9% of the time when you ask somebody, hey, I really enjoy the way you did that, they're flattered. They don't even think they're that good at it, but they're more than willing to share their time and their talent and their experiences with you, number one. Number two, put yourself out there, whether that means on social media, taking that stretch role, getting into an area. I mean, but look, I think there's a reason that men probably have a shorter lifespan than women. Our famous last words are "hold my beer" or "hey, watch this," and we jump off, and then you never hear from us again. I think most of my roles have been stretch roles, whether because it was in a domain that I didn't have a ton of expertise. Maybe it was a function where I had a limited amount. As Richard Branson has said, if you don't think you can do it, take it and figure it out. Take the role and figure it out. I'm of that school. I mean, if you've got 60, 70%, jump and build your soft skills. The hard skills you'll learn very, very quickly. Number three would be, live to fight another day. And I know you've heard me say this. It has served me very, very well. I think technologists have a propensity to think very binary. It is or it isn't. It's a 1 or a 0. My handbook says there's 3. I need 3. And I need all these very clear answers. You know as well as I do that the higher up you climb in an organization, the more you have to operate in the gray and make decisions based on limited information. And the better you get at that, and the better you learn how to come in, I needed 3 things, I got 2, I'm not going to die on the hill of the third one. I'm going to go execute the two that I got to the best of my ability, earn my seat, and then come back and get the three. And it's a whole lot easier to come back from a position of strength than it is to go in and just be that clanging bell that just doesn't kind of seem to be able to read the room. I think learning that earlier in your career is super helpful, because in your 20s and 30s, you tend to, think a bit more black and white, and you see the world's best CIOs, CEOs, CFOs, et cetera, have learned to operate in the gray quite well.
All good advice. Thank you so much for those reflections, Jay, on some of the items that have been difference makers for you along the way. Well, Jay Ferro, always a pleasure to speak with you. I greatly appreciate you sharing the breadth of your experience, the specifics of that experience in your current roles at Clario, some of what you're seeing in terms of what the future might hold in a business like yours and in technology more generally speaking. We spoke about the importance of connection and ecosystems. I feel blessed you're part of mine and that I'm part of yours. So thank you so much.
I feel the same, Peter. You're a good friend, and I appreciate seeing you again, and I look forward to seeing you again in person sometime soon.
I'm looking forward to it as well.